Today we're building this DIY side table that can nest with the lounger I made in the last video. We're using some cedar 2x4 offcuts from the last project, but you could make this with less than one 2x4 and one picket. I think the total cost would be about $15, but that includes wood, epoxy, and finish. I cut the scraps to 1.5 by 1.5 inches, and this is going to make up the body. Also, here are some drawings that I started with, but you can see that I made some changes during the build process. I decided to use half-lap joints here for the two angled joints to add some stability. I cut the three pieces that made up each leg, leaving them a bit long. Then I laid out the pieces and eyeballed the angle that I wanted for the leg. I ended up with something that was close to what I had in my drawings, just in case you're going to build this too. I traced the angle onto the foot and leg pieces, and then I trimmed off the excess of both of them using my miter fence. I set my fence to the width of my stock and then the blade to half the height of the stock and made the crosscuts for the lap joints. Then I made this vertical cut with my fence. This is probably not very safe and is not the most precise way of doing this, so you should either make repeated crosscuts and remove material that way, or use a tenon jig like this one, which I made before my next project. It's fairly straightforward and gives you nice, repeatable, clean cuts. I measured out where the tabletop side stretcher is going to go, and this is just based on the height of the lounger I have to make sure that it can nest in there. I went back to the miter sled and repeated all the same cuts that I just made for the last bottom half lap. I'm using TotalBoat Thixo fast curing epoxy for this project, but you could also use outdoor rated wood glue. The epoxy is just a little bit more sturdy and fills in the gaps better, at least that's what I find. I used brad nails to hold the laps in place while they cured, but if I did this again, I would clamp them and that way you wouldn't see the nails, even though they're pointing to the inside. Once things cured, I took the opportunity to sand everything down. And I trimmed both feet to final length. I also cut down 3 horizontal stretchers, although I ended up only needing 2 of them. I measured how long the tabletop slats needed to be and proceeded to cut those down on my table saw with a stop block. I'm using leftover slats from the last project as well, and I think they're about an inch or maybe a little bit less than an inch in width. I epoxied and then I clamped the bottom horizontal stretcher on. I'm using another stretcher as a spacer here to keep both sides in place. I decided to epoxy on the tabletop slats before things cured so that I could ensure that everything would align just right. This Kreg workstation I'm using has a nice clamping feature so that I can keep both sides pressed firmly to the tabletop and ensure that when things do cure, everything is going to be nice and flat. I attached the slats with epoxy and some brad nails, using a 1/4 inch thick spacer. Once I got to the end, I epoxied and clamped on the top horizontal stretcher so it's flush with the last slat. I had left the tabletop side stretchers long because I didn't know what the final size was going to be for the top of the table. So once things cured, I just used my track saw to trim it flush. I also trimmed off some of the slats that were a little bit proud on the sides. You could also use a table saw for this or a circular saw. I did some final sanding and applied a coat or two of teak oil. And with that it was done. This was a really fun and quick project. It only took me a few hours. I think it turned out great, and I love how the angle of the sides mirror the angles in the lounger. I also love how the color of the cedar really pops with the teak oil. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments and consider hitting the thumbs up and subscribing. I've got a couple more projects in this series that are going to be coming soon. Also, check out the video description for the CAD drawings, and maybe if I'm up to it, I'll put some rough plans in there and you can make it for yourself. Okay, anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.